All right, hello everybody. About to get started right now. So welcome to the Idea Talk. This is on personal branding. It's Thursday, 7/28/2022, 5 p.m. Thank you for joining us. Next slide, please. So this is an overview of what we're going to go through today. We're going to go over some community agreements. I'm going to introduce the speaker, Adrienne Lowe, and then we're going to have our speaker discussion. She's going to go over her presentation. We're going to have a Q&A, and then we're going to close and give resources. So let us know if you have any community agreements to add, but these are the ones we have. Foster space for others. Be kind to yourself and others. We're all learning. Be curious, keeping an open heart and mind. Try it on. Take what you learn and apply it in a way that feels good to you. If you don't know who we are, we're Asian American Professional Association. We have our signature program, which is the mentorship program. We receive one-on-one mentoring through our experienced network of mentors, get coaching. We have a board leadership program. You learn what it takes to be a board member on a nonprofit board. It's 6 months, so you can apply for that every year. And if you're interested in international Toastmasters, AAPA has their own Toastmasters club. Helps you with public speaking and it helps you develop your communication skills. And then we have our virtual IdeaTalks, which is what you're in right now. And we just discuss topics that are important to the community. Sometimes people will give us ideas for the Idea Talks, and maybe personal branding was one of those ideas. And then if you want to stay connected with the organization, we're on all social media platforms. You can check us out at our website at aapamentoring.com, and then there's a QR code if you are interested in scanning. And then without further ado, I'm going to introduce our speaker, Adrienne Lowe, Director of Talent Analytics at Grainger. She has gotten her MBA from Northwestern and has a bachelor from Yale. She'll explain further to you and start presenting. So go ahead and take it away, Adrienne.
Thanks, Kajana. Welcome, everyone. So I know it's 5 o'clock on a Thursday, so just before we start off, I just want to comment, this will be very, very informal, and it's a small group today too. So I think we're gonna hear from each other, all of you on this call, hopefully. This is designed to be an interactive workshop rather than a presentation. So if you're hoping to just sit back and watch, sorry, I hope you stay on the call. Coming out of this workshop, we want to walk away with a brand that we can refine, right? And this is a good, safe place for us to get feedback from each other. We'll be talking about this topic from a very personal and definitely Asian American angle. So a little bit more about me. So I work for a Fortune 500 company right now in HR, but more from the business analytics side. And I'm very passionate about putting on these workshops, which I've done for quite a few years now. I'm actually putting on 3 workshops, this same one, personal branding, as well as a workshop on speaking with presence and networking with Ascend, where I'm a board member in the Midwest chapter. And I actually met Karen last year, I think, through another similar personal branding workshop I conducted through Asian American Executive Association. So the reason I'm so passionate about this is a lot of it's, I think, my personal story. I mentioned, I think, in the intro that Karen provided, my rocky road to leadership. There have been a lot of stumbles, and a lot of them have been related to, I would say, the personal brand, the imperfect personal brand that that was perceived by my bosses, my coworkers over the years. So I've jumped around a lot. So currently working for a big company. I started my career in consulting, jumped around to pharmaceuticals, and to a big defense company, Lockheed Martin, before I landed where I am today. And a lot of the stumbles, it was because part of it was, I think, a lack of confidence. I took some time to find my voice. And because of that, people saw me as, oh, the Asian person who does analytics, who's smart and academic, but not necessarily a leader. And I decided probably 8 years ago, when I saw the Ascend study that showed it, this was not an issue limited to me. Actually, Asian American women are the least likely of any demographic group to get into leadership. I was very determined to understand the root causes, internal and external, and how I could overcome it. Because the idea of having worked so hard all my life to get this amazing education just to get stuck because of these factors was just too much to bear. And as I did a lot of research and actually created curriculum, started teaching, in part to help with my own personal branding and to develop the confidence in public speaking, I realized that there are a few ingredients to career success that anyone could really learn in a short amount of time, as long as you're aware of it and determined of it. But some of these items, and I do think there are 3 pillars to career development, and it's how you present yourself, the people so the networking, and I mentioned personal branding. There are cultural factors that make some of these topics more difficult to us. And so my background, coming from a very traditional Chinese family where I was taught Chinese daughter, just be agreeable. My voice wasn't really celebrated at home. I was very shy growing up. I was told just, it's okay, just work hard, study hard, and develop an expertise, keep your head down, and that's enough. Get a good education, that's absolutely not enough. You can't work harder than anyone else. It's not going to take you past a certain point in your career. And so I think these topics are extremely powerful, and I don't believe in wasted potential, right? Like, we're all capable of so much. We shouldn't let cultural factors as well as stereotypes limit us. So that's a little bit of my background. So we will jump directly into the content. So first, I wanted to share, this is probably not surprising to you, some of the stereotypes that we probably all encountered, right? And this is well documented that these are excerpts directly from HBR and Bloomberg. And I'm just seeing on paper, it does still, open your eyes, right? And I've encountered this personally. So Asians are thought of as confident and low on social skills. And we know that in the workplace, it's all about sponsorship. Who's willing to advocate for you in order to get ahead? And if you're seen as low social skill, you're not going to have those advocates in the network. The middle column, the humility and deference to authority. So this is something I have been working to overcome. And I know I'm speaking from my personal standpoint, but certainly in the East Asian culture in which I grew up, obedience was, I would say, enforced in my family. So critical thinking was definitely a skill that I had to develop later in my career, I think after college. And certainly in the workforce, right? If you have an expertise, you can do the work, okay, that's sufficient at lower levels. Getting into manager, getting into executive levels, it's all about your critical thinking, your thought leadership, your ability to think on the fly, have new ideas. And that's an area that I think just very recently in my current job, I've been able to get more comfortable with, thankfully. But it's required overcoming a lot of the, I would say just, the cultural constraints from my upbringing. And then on the right, communication and networking styles. So I mentioned in one of the pillars, ability to speak with presence. There's one reason I do these workshops. It's actually part of my personal development. It's not supernatural for me to put these on. And that's why I would say 8 years ago, I forced myself to do it. Create a curriculum, start getting myself out there to get used to being in the spotlight, get used to speaking out, having a point of view. And I pursued it quite obsessively on my own time. And that's really helped me in my career because I've been able to bring that over to the workplace. But certainly, networking styles where you want to really put yourself out there and make sure you get to know a wide variety of people, really show sides of personality. I've realized is so important. And that's another topic that sometimes I cover in other workshops. So again, small group, seeing this on paper, like what's your reaction to it? And you can put it in the chat or you can just unmute yourself. Is this something that resonates with you, that you personally encounter, something that you struggle with as I have had to through my career? Any reactions to seeing this on paper?
I'll jump in 100%. Absolutely. And I think I might even add on there as well that compared to other ethnicities, I find that I'm seen as smaller, younger, less experienced on the outside. I certainly don't look my age. I think the tone of my voice also sounds higher, and the way that I enunciate also, I think, is influenced by being bilingual and having Japanese in my language and in the way that I grew up. So I might add in there as well that there's another trip hazard there on the optics and the way that I'm perceived, just because the way that I look and the way that I was brought up does not seem older, engaged in a sort of male, pale, stale is my favorite 3 words,
Right.
kind of a world.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely something I can relate to. And you know, in terms of kind of, I guess, adapting your behavior to workplace, like you have to stay true to yourself, right? You can't completely change yourself, but just understanding, you know, what is viewed as someone with presence, because there are, you know, there are people who are very young, who are very successful, who are very authoritative. There are certain tricks, like I know my speaking style, and I look, you know, I'm in my 40s. People think I'm a new college grad. I do often tease it out there. Hey, like, you know, I graduated from grad school 13 years ago, and they're like, oh gosh, what? But in terms of speaking style, I watch a lot of videos to understand what is presence. And even if you act young, look young, have a young voice, there are different techniques too, just, you know, in terms of how you carry yourself, how you enunciate your words. I've actually brought down my tone a little bit. And being from the West Coast, I was actually very often mistaken for being from LA. I realized actually from my peers, I was ending a lot of my sentences on the uptone. So a little bit of that, like a valley girl, and I've actually cut that out. So I'm very conscious about ending on a down tone. So there are certain things that you could tweak, but of course, you know, stereotypes are often hard to battle as well. Any other reactions to this?
Adrienne, I'll add, thank you so much for being here, first of all. And similar to your experience, I actually charter the Toastmaster Club just to be able to do that as my way of forcing myself out of my comfort zone to do more presentation. And then also similar to your story with the tone and the depth of my voice, I actually learned to adjust it and deepen it, if you will, so that I don't always sound like I'm pitchy. And a little bit of background on that was I saw somewhere that Margaret Thatcher actually had a coach or something back in the day to learn to do that so that she would sound more authoritative or something of such. So that helped that inspired me, if you will, to really work on my voice and not sound as pitchy or always so excited.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. So let's move into the next slide, and we'll jump into the core content on branding. Okay, so some of you may have already seen this pie model. When I first saw this, it blew my mind. And this goes back to the philosophy I was raised with, right? Just work hard, get a good education, get an expertise. So, and you can add it to the chat. And this is an old model that's still exists today. A lot of corporate HR departments actually share this. So this is about career progression, not just getting into the workforce. So how important is each piece of the pie to career success? So if there's a 10, 30, and 60, how would you allocate that to performance, image, and exposure? Just take a guess in the chat. Okay, there's a guess that image is the highest. An image is a square box around it just because we are talking about branding today. So that's what we're trying to optimize. Doesn't mean it's the highest necessarily, but it could be. Okay. All right, let's jump to the answers. You can slide forward. Okay. So image is 30% and exposure is 60%. We are focused on imaging today because in order to get the exposure you need to fine tune your image too, right? You need to know what your brand is, you need to promote it, and that helps you get more exposure. So again, quite shocking that to me, 10% is performance. I think, sometimes I take this with a grain of salt. I think it also depends, right? Like if you're a doctor, this doesn't hold. I think this is very much about corporate America, and it's really about getting more senior in your organization. Once you get to more executive levels, senior manager levels, you're not really doing the work, right? How you're perceived, how you influence becomes really important. Okay, next slide. All right, we're going to jump directly into this branding statement. And it's so important because I really believe if you don't know your brand and you don't actively promote it, people will generally just base it on stereotypes. And this has happened to me before in more than one performance review. It's been noted that I seem introverted and not assertive enough. And sometimes it comes from people that I didn't actually work a lot with. And so that's what trips me, right? Like if you work with me and you didn't think I was assertive enough, I really do value that feedback. But if you've lived in actions with me and in some 360s, you tell me I'm introverted, it's like, oh, where is that coming from? Probably a stereotype. But at the same time, it's like, I probably didn't do enough when I first met this person to establish my brand. And there are studies that show that you make your first impression in the first 7 seconds that you meet someone. So it's very important in how you hold yourself, what you say, and how you say it. So the brand, and a lot of times, I provide this to pretty senior people too. Even executives don't really know. It's like, yeah, I always introduce myself based on what I do, but the brand is much more than that. It's more your specific strengths, your attributes, if you will. And I would say that because the stereotypes are so strong on Asian Americans as being hardworking and competent, I believe that it's best not to focus the brand on that. People have never, ever questioned my analytical ability, for instance, but they've questioned my leadership skills. So think of how, you can really differentiate yourself on these softer attributes, but you need to be able to back it up. It's okay if it's aspirational, right? It's something that it should be something that you can work towards too. So the brand, and I'll provide a framework in just a moment. Again, very small group here, so perfect place for us to test our brands with each other. Part of it is what you do, your skills. The most important one is on the right, I think, how you really create value, what's unique about your attributes. I'm sorry, my dog just grabbed my shoe. Just 1 second. No. Sorry about that. We had just adopted a new dog and he's been destroying shoes. Okay. And what you do is how you add value. So I'll show an example of this on the next slide, and then we're going to spend some time. Oh, actually, before I show an example, it's okay. I'm sorry. Can you go back to the slide with a lot of words? I think, yeah. So this is just to get you started as you think about your unique attributes, right? Like I mentioned, like get away from, hardworking, your expertise, but the traits that maybe they resonate with you, but it might not be as obvious to others. So these are some that I came up with that I think are pretty neat, but really just a starting point. The one I like to focus on, it's influencing, it's relationship building. That speaks to leadership skills. All right, and then can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so this is a framework, pretty simple. Again, starting point. We're going to spend a few minutes to develop this, and each one is a sentence, so it need not be very long. Describe really, who you are, your unique attributes, your talents, your strengths, and what it is that you provide. What value do you add to an organization? And I'll show you my branding statement on the next one. Next slide, please. Okay, so I mentioned that I'm not just an expert or SME, I'm a thought leader. nationally, and I'm also a leader. So I manage a sizable team, and I focus on HR analytics, but there's a strategic component. So I want to focus first when I speak to other people. I'm not just an analytical person. I lead with a strategy. So thought leader, team leader, HR strategy, and analytics. And what makes me effective is not that I'm good with numbers. It's because I can build very strong relationships. I can influence stakeholders, including the C-suite. I present to the CEO even. And the value I add is so we can make better workforce decisions in a very competitive labor market. So whenever I introduce myself within my company or, at conferences, this is what I tend to lead with. And I might not use the exact words, but, I try to introduce it subtly as much as possible, every opportunity I get. Okay, so can we go back to the blank? There we go. So now we're going to take 5-6 minutes to actually put our heads down and create a draft brand statement. It need not be perfect, but let's just get started here since it's top of mind, and obviously you're invested in developing a brand if you're here tonight. We're going to ask you to share it with the rest of the group, and in the moment we're going to get feedback. Okay, so we'll just pause for about 6 minutes. You grab a pen, grab your computer, and start a working brand statement, working draft.
Adrienne calling. She says, I am a former entrepreneur turned HR coordinator who has a passion for problem solving and finding ways to make processes more efficient so that growing startups can successfully scale.
Thank you. I love it. I love it. And I think, given the small group, it'd be great to hear directly from individuals if we don't mind turning on our video. Again, very small group, safe place.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm actually sitting in my car.
Oh. Yeah, I love this. I love this. Any feedback from anyone? I like how you would link the entrepreneurial background to the passion for problem solving and how you can bring forth that experience and make impacts. So I really love that. Maybe you make that linkage even a little stronger, right? Because as an entrepreneur, right, you work with limited resources. You're constantly problem solving. You have to do some risk taking, and that translates over well to the HR space, which tends to be slow, traditional, not very action oriented.
Right. Yeah.
I love it. Any feedback from anyone else? It could be that you just love it. And the only other thing is if maybe it's efficient and effective as well. Okay, let's hear from someone else. See if you want to just turn on your camera and mute yourself and share your brand. And then you can also drop it in the chat too, so we can hear it from you and then also react to the written words. Jessica?
Yes, I'll go. I'm an analyst who builds insightful reports in organized detail. So companies can make better decisions and understand situations. I can write it down.
Yeah, if you don't mind adding it to the chat as well. I know some of us just respond better when we can see the words. So any feedback from the rest of the group? So I think my initial feedback is I think it's good. I think it's very much about detail orientation that sometimes that kind of falls a little bit in the stereotype, right? Analytical, detail oriented. What else do you bring in terms of like a personal attribute that someone can set you apart from the next person who's an analyst? And maybe it has to do with the insights and linking it to, say, I don't know what kind of organization you work for, right? But really linking it to business strategy, maybe.
That's very interesting. I actually work in defense and aerospace right now.
In what industry, sorry?
In defense right now.
Oh, sorry, it's a little muffled.
I'm in defense right now.
Defense? Okay. I used to work for Lockheed. I was in defense.
Yeah, I'm at Raytheon and I was at
You're in Raytheon? Okay.
I guess I'm not like too aware, or maybe it's something that I haven't really explored, but I have gotten good feedback that they like my analysis and that like it's very presentable, very clean, very clear.
Yeah. Well, you should add that, right? It's something about, so it's the organized detail that like it doesn't, for me personally, it doesn't really resonate. Like it sounds like it's more like it's impactful, it's tied to company strategy, it's communication skills, right? Written and verbal. Think of how you can stand out from the next analyst. exactly what you told me. If those are strengths, you highlight them, is my advice. And I think it's really important, having worked in one of those big defense companies that are very traditional. I actually had a really hard time at Lockheed. That was one of the companies that could have pigeonholed me in the beginning.
Yeah.
It's not diverse at all, right? And so I think it becomes that much more important to show that you're not just the analyst, right? The Asian analyst who can do good work, that you're more. I didn't do it right. So I left after 3 years.
Yeah, so I totally understand like where you're coming from and how you feel. I get the same feeling too sometimes.
Yeah, it's just a very non-diverse environment. Okay. Any other feedback on Jessica's brand? Okay. Let's move on to, let's have another volunteer, maybe Lillian, you're next on my screen.
Thank you.
Let me copy and paste what I got.
Okay.
This is such a hard thing because I feel like when you talk about it in conversation, it just sort of flow. When these, when people ask like, what do you do? Or whatever your background is, but to put it concisely is just so hard. Anyways, well, it seems like mine kind of long, but I'm just gonna put it in. So I am a leadership coach and forward-thinking human resources practitioner who cultivates meaningful relationships with professionals within and outside of the HR community and helps them strengthen their self-awareness so they can expand their influence as effective leaders.
I love it. Another HR person, huh? Yeah, that seems very strong. I like, the key terms: forward-looking, thinking. So you're someone who's innovative, best practices. You focus on the relationships, and you help others expand their influence. I love that. That's your influence, right? Influence others to become more influential. I love it. Any feedback there? I think it's super strong.
Thank you.
I like that it's detailed.
Okay, so Keiko.
I've really liked everyone so far. I did miss a little bit, but everyone's been really great. I've put here, I am a professional sustainability strategist and change agent who is uniquely networked, versatile, and data-driven, so companies can design and execute innovative sustainability solutions for large-scale, complex, hard-to-green operations.
Ooh, that's awesome. Yeah, a lot of keywords there. I love change agent. That's so strong, and I think it's so timely too, because sustainability is becoming obviously a huge topic. I love it. I don't have any feedback on this one. And anyone else? It's very strong. All right, and Gabe, can we hear from you?
Oh, hi. Sorry, I kind of wrote mine like for anyone who watches Jeopardy, this is like the final Jeopardy question that I didn't have the answer to, so I had to just make something up.
It's okay.
So let's see.
It's a starting point.
Okay, I'm a guy who gets misunderstood, kind of like Pink. I get the party started, but I have never dyed my hair any color. Let's see. I get the job done and make people laugh at the same time, meaning lower stress and heart rates. I would say that I have a great sense of humor, but usually people who have a real sense of humor don't say that they have it, they just demonstrate it. I wrote some other stuff, but anyway, like I said, just kind of handling a lot of stuff here. I'll probably need to just take these questions and offline and come up with something that's a little bit more real.
Well, I think it's a good starting point, and I think this actually bleeds into an important topic in that it's important to have this professional brand that you can use in a more professional environment, right? When you're meeting someone and networking, meeting someone in your company, introducing yourself. But it's also good to have that personal brand too. So, I mean, my personal brand is like, I try to refute, I think, the stereotype that people assume Asians are kind of, yeah, nerdy and asocial and not very adventurous or fun to get to know. And so when it's my turn to give a fun fact of, that happens all the time in group meetings. There are a few that I draw from just to like surprise people. So it's, and then the ones that resonate with me. So, and things like, okay, I'm a roller coaster junkie. I'm season pass holder to Six Flags. And sometimes people will be like, really, I'm so surprised. They just kind of assume I'm more conservative, or I have a tattoo of my dog, or I've traveled to 60 countries. I used to be known as ALO because I was a big clubber. Like, stuff like that is really important too. Like, just to show your fun side. But yeah, I think with what you have, Gabe, like, what I'm hearing is you bring the energy, you bring the humor, and that can be worked into your personal brand. Maybe it's you elevate the energy of the team.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And yeah, I think I appreciate the mention on the personal brand, because I think I was thinking more along those lines. Certainly the professional one, like if like in a reel or whatever, I actually do need to give this not just a little bit more thought, but probably a lot more. But on the personal brand, actually, it kind of carries over, like just lightening up, just adding a little bit of levity to the gravity.
Yeah,
I've had people tell me in work situations where, yeah, what you said was entertaining, or hey, I really like what you wrote. It was very creative and stuff like that. But like how I translate that, I'm gonna have to give it some thought as to like if I were to give like a 30-second pitch, like what is it?
Right. I think you have a lot to work with, right? Bringing the energy, maybe helping teams work through, kind of navigate stressful scenarios, yeah, I think you're off to a great starting point. All right. No. All right, so we have 15 minutes left. I do have one more topic, and we can go to the next slide. So now that and one more, sorry. Actually, let's have this discussion really fast, and then we'll see whether we can get to the final topic. So would love to hear, just brainstorming. I mentioned a few different opportunities to share a brand, right? Just whenever you get to introduce yourself in informal settings. Are there any other tactics that people can share that work for you, or just ideas in general?
I think social media platforms, I don't know how this group is with using it, but it's one of my favorite places to go to really reach out to people in different communities. And also when this come up, or I connect with someone and just do like a informal introduction to friends or network. I think that's a good opportunity, or those are good opportunities to really share the brand.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in my job, whenever someone fairly senior, like a VP starts, or senior director or director, I would try to grab coffee with them, a lunch, and kind of share some of that brand in my introduction, just to kind of start expanding my network and trying to get them to be an advocate. I've also had a situation in my current company where when I first started, a VP introduced me as a nerd. Shocking, right? In front of other senior people, like, oh, we couldn't find someone as nerdy as Adrienne internally. We're so glad we found her externally. And I was like, whoa. I actually sent him a note after and asked for lunch and said, actually, that's not the brand I want to portray. Can I actually share with you what my actual brand is? And he was very open to it, and became one of my greatest advocates. So it's okay to be pretty deliberate about this. Okay. I've also seen people, and I mean, I'm not comfortable with it, but sometimes when people give a presentation about themselves and the work that they do, I've seen it written down too. Like, this is who I am, and my family, whatever, where I went to college, and this is my brand. This is the value that I bring, which I think it's pretty smart. Thanks, Keiko, for that comment. Okay, and final topic, can we go to the next slide? Okay, so a lot of you are in HR, and I'm sure you've done a lot of interviewing, so I won't go into this too deep, but sometimes I'm surprised that people haven't heard of the STAR model. So now that you have a brand, it's important to find examples to kind of back it up. And this becomes very important when you're obviously interviewing for positions, also when you're for performance review, obviously too. So, really briefly, like, setting up a situation, the action, the result. So in the remaining minutes, I wonder whether anyone could give an example of using the STAR model to support your brand. So an actual situation that supports the statement that you just created. And we can give you a few minutes to think about it if everyone can think of something. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I can start with my example. So I think I mentioned, I try to highlight my ability to influence and build relationships. So when I first started this job and I was asked to create a 3-year roadmap for my function, one of the first things I did was to gain buy-in from the CHRO and my manager to create a workshop, a listening workshop, where I was able to bring together all the senior executives in HR. And we brought them all in, I brought them all in the room, and we had a half-day visioning session on what the gaps were in people analytics, where we want to be, and potential ways to fill in the gaps, as well as priorities. Through this, I was able to understand HR's true priorities and act on those priorities, as well as really start building some deep relationships with individuals. Anyone else have an example they could share? Let's have one volunteer. I know everyone's done behavioral interviewing, right?
Yeah.
I think that's almost every organization now. You can't get away from this.
So I had a report to turn in. It was ugly. I made it pretty, and a lot of people liked it.
Okay. Okay, I like it. I would just be careful about the words like ugly and pretty, and maybe choose more high impact words. So
yeah, so I used that example before. It was not user friendly. It was very
okay, yeah, be specific.
So I made it faster, more usable, and I got a lot of really good feedback.
Perfect. Yeah, so it helped people get to their insights quicker.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. That's great. That's great. Okay, Keiko is an example. That's great. Yeah, I might just here show a little more of your action. Like, so your work kicked off. This is very focused on the result, right? Your work kicked off the launch of a team and commitment. That's great. But what did you actually actively contribute to make that happen? So most of your time should be spent on that action. Anyone else in the remaining minutes? Okay. Let's see. That's good. So you showed initiative. And maybe you want to expand, like, what do you mean by you jumped in, right? Like, did you volunteer for it and you kind of stretched your own skill set by taking on these new tasks? Like, how did you do that?
So basically, our IT team slacked me and the other coordinator, and they were like, "Hey, since the old HRBP she's no longer with the company. She used to handle like laptop equipment retrieval for us. There's kind of been like a gap ever since she left, and so I just jumped in and I started helping with that because
Okay.
there's like everyone else in HR is busy.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So hopefully this was a useful exercise. I know it's not easy to promote yourself this way. It's so important, right? Like a lot of other people are doing it. And I mean, for me personally, like I'm so obsessed over this stuff, and like I'm pretty proud that I finally got this right. After really kind of falling on my face in my last company, I just became very determined. Like I actually relocated for this job from DC to Chicago, relocated my son, my husband, my first director level position, and I was full of anxiety. And I realized it was all this. Like the more time I spent on this, in addition to my work responsibilities, the better chance I had for success. And to be honest, sometimes it's not received super well because when people assume you're the, academic, hardworking, analytical person, and you show up and you have all these ideas. And I did get feedback from one individual, one VP, that I moved very aggressively. And at first I was really shocked. Like, how did I go from not assertive enough in my last position to aggressive to aggressive here? But that's okay. I'd rather be called aggressive and then I can dial back a little bit. It's actually worked. So I've been here for 3 years, and earlier this year I found out, so they have a program for directors and senior directors, the highest potential, where they put you in a special development program and make sure the opportunities you get to stay with a company, develop into a VP. And I was chosen for that. And I was like, wow, like I went from really doubting myself in my last job because of this personal branding issue, to potentially be on track for a VP at a Fortune 500 company and having the CEO know my name. So this stuff is so important. Like, I really hope we all invest in this, right? Because I think, yeah, as an Asian American woman, there was a lot to overcome, both in terms of stereotypes and just some of the cultural baggage, if you will. But it's definitely overcomeable. I really enjoyed getting to know you, this small group. I hope this was fun and useful and impactful. And feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. All right, thank you all.
Kaylin has a question about something.
Oh, okay, sure.
She's asking,
Okay.
do you want to ask Kaylin? Kaylin,
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
sorry if
hi.
I'm saying that.
Yeah, Kayleen. So you mentioned previously that you asked senior hires for lunch or coffee. What is your ask from them? How do you get them to say yes to you?
Yeah, so I mean, part of it is I do lead a pretty, I'm pretty senior in my organization now, and I lead a team, so that helps certainly. So at this point, it's very much, hey, you're new to the company, would love to just get to know you, like really honestly, and share a little bit what I do. I mean, people are very open to networking, especially when they're new, and especially in this new hybrid virtual environment. So it's never been received negatively. And sometimes these sessions are just virtual. And most of the time when I talk to them in the beginning, like maybe it's 10% about work. The rest is just like, hey, like, so like, where do you live? Where are you from? Like, what's your career track? It's just very casual conversations. And that goes to the part about like networking, right? It's really about relationships, and it's almost like, you know, becoming friends. So yeah, I think relationship building is so key, and just identifying when you hear from these people, like what's important to them, like little things like, oh, maybe they have a dog too, and you can connect on that, you know, like understanding how many kids do they have, like what are their interests, like, and registering that and bringing that back up again, it really helps to strengthen that relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
Talking to them like a human being.
Yeah. Oh, the more casual, the better. Talk to them on, you know, kind of eye level, right? And now that, you know, so I lead the API VRG at my company. So I have a lot of other, usually younger Asian American women reaching out to me, struggling with some of these same issues that I've had through much of my career. And they'll ask directly for mentorship. You know, I would love to hear tips for me on my career. And I'm very flattered and love having those conversations.
Thank you. Where can we find you?
Oh, I'm on LinkedIn. Let me send you my LinkedIn here. I did realize I missed an earlier question when we were talking about tone. So I did used to use an app. I think it's still out there. This was a few years ago when I was, you know, really focusing on my speaking skills. It's called Speeko. Speeko. If not, there's similar ones. I think that was on my iPhone, free app, and just casually, you know, you can turn it on when you're speaking. It'll tell you, are you varying your tone? Are you speaking too fast? Are you pausing enough? And sometimes even just, I think, asking a friend, you know, when you're presenting, you know, did that resonate with you? Like, you know, what could I have done differently stylistically? I think is really helpful too. Here's my LinkedIn.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody, for contributing to the conversation. We're at the end of our time. I'm gonna put in the chat a feedback form. Let us know how you liked everything, how everything was. Thank you, Adrienne. That was a great presentation. Thank you for sharing all that you shared.
Thank you for having me. Have a
You're
good
welcome.
evening, everyone.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you, Adrienne.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all the participation and engagement. Good luck. Bye.
Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Have a good evening.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks, Adrienne.
Thanks, Adrienne.